Boa tarde, pessoal, tudo bom? Gente, hoje a gente está começando mais uma trilha das mock classes. Hoje é a primeira aula de Business, Comunicação e Direito. Nossa aula hoje é sobre a arte de falar em público, ministrada pela amazing Professor Joanne, da EU Business School. Galerinha, antes de começar a aula, eu quero dar uns recadinhos para vocês, tá? Gente, primeiro de tudo, Instagram. Quem não está seguindo a Efígie no Instagram, segue lá, @EfígieEduca. Lá vai ter sorteio, informação e todos os eventos que vão acontecer, a gente coloca lá, ok? Telegram. Gente, aqui na tela, o Fábio vai colocar para a gente o QR Code do nosso grupo. Só abre a câmera do celular e entra no grupo. Lá também tem sorteio, tem um monte de informação legal, um monte de coisa. Gente, outro recado. O link da aula pelo Simpla. Não pode compartilhar, tá? Cada um tem um link, cada um tem um cadastro. Se compartilha com amigo, com pai, com mãe, só consegue assistir a aula aquele que entra primeiro. Depois os outros não conseguem, tá? E tem sorteio no final da trilha. Para quem tem no mínimo 3 certificados da trilha, vai concorrer aos prêmios. E agora, vamos começar com a aula da arte de falar em público, ministrada pela Professor Joanne. Aqui no chat, a gente vai colocar o contato do Caio. O Caio é representante da EU Business School, Switzerland. Ele fala em português. Se vocês quiserem mais informação da universidade, pode mandar um e-mail para ele, pode falar com ele, que ele vai ajudar todo mundo, tá bom? Welcome, Professor Joanne. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I understood nothing of what was being said. I hope everybody else did. And I'm sure it was fantastic, a lot of fantastic information there. But not what, all I understood was Joanne Jankowski.
Thank you for coming, Professor.
Thank you very much for having me. Welcome, everyone, to our class today on effective public speaking. If you give me a moment, I'm going to see if I can share some slides with you as well. Voilà, here we go. Could you confirm, Melka, that they're visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. And I think we can be moving them as well. All right, good. So like I said, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Joanne Jankowski. Just to reintroduce myself, I represent EU Business School, a school that I'm coming to you guys today from Geneva. It's beautiful weather. You can see the mountains today, so it's amazing. And it's quite late, well, quite late. It's 8 o'clock, so you know it's later than for you guys. Like I said, today a little bit on effective public speaking. So without any further ado, I would say, let us get started. And I'd like to start with a little bit of dark humor by Jerry Springer, who is a really well-known American comedian. And he once said that at a funeral, the average person would rather be in a casket than delivering the eulogy. And of course, he's exaggerating. You know, he's a comedian, so it's meant to be funny. But he does make a point. And that point is that actually public speaking, you know, we know from research that public speaking is one of the main fears of a lot of people. We don't like doing it. It's not something that to a lot of us comes naturally, and we tend to really fear it. So, you know, it's when we look at studies, it's at the top with fears such as fear of spiders and also fear of losing a job, you know, and things like that. So we're really, a lot of us are really not comfortable with that. And if you are one of those people, I am here to tell you today that you are not alone, because as I said, it's really a majority. There are a few people out there that are born, you know, excellent public speakers that come up on stage and they can do, you know, whatever with no problem. But again, that's really the minority, and most of us really fear public speaking. And one of those people who was really fearful of, you know, presenting and being on stage is Warren Buffett. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Warren Buffett is he's a very rich, famous entrepreneur from the US, self-made, so millionaire, billionaire, I would even dare to say. And he's one of those people who, became very, very successful. And as a young boy, he was extremely fearful of speaking in public. It was one of the biggest things for him. And one of the biggest obstacles also that he felt that, can maybe stop him from doing great business. And so, it was to the stage where he would come out, and when he had to speak in public, he would have, bad reaction of his body. Sometimes he would, even vomit and things like that. He talks about this in his interviews. And, but he knew that if he wanted to become successful, that he would have to learn this art. And he signed up for a class, and the first class was a huge failure because he walked in, and as the professor started interacting with the students, he left because he was so afraid. But then he tried again, and he went back. He didn't give up, and he went into the class, and he managed to get through it, kind of forced himself. And he talks about this in interviews a lot, that the one diploma that he actually has that he really kind of presents up on his wall is the one from finalizing that public speaking course. And Warren Buffett, he says that, and I quote here, that you will be worth 50% more if you improve this one human skill. Generally communication, I'm a professor of communication, and, I've seen it all. I've worked in big businesses around the world. And up till now, I also, do a lot of trainings apart from the fact that I'm a teacher at school. And I see that one of the key elements for everyone, whatever you do, whatever occupation you have, is communication, the ability to build relationships, the ability to communicate with all of the people that you work with. And one of the things also is, if you want to be a leader, for example, and as I represent a business school and I come from business, I see a lot of leaders. I work with a lot of leaders, and one of the key skills for leadership is the skill of communication and public speaking. You have to be able to stand in front of a crowd. You have to be able to stand in front of your customers, in front of your people, your employees. So this is something that is extremely important. And so, as I was mentioning, these different groups, we call them in business, we call them stakeholders. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that word. Perhaps some of you are. So just to explain, a stakeholder is anyone who has an impact on a company or that the company impacts, right? So these could be, I gave some examples here, these could be customers, these can be employees, these could be our suppliers, so those who, bring us different materials and, for production, for example, and then the general public as well. So anyone else who interacts with the company. And so, as I said, for every one of these stakeholders, for in terms of business, it's important that we have that possibility to communicate, the ability to communicate, and the ability to speak in public as well. For example, you might be at some point, if you decide to go into business, you might be delivering a sales pitch, right? So you have to make it exciting, and you have to be super convincing for people to want to buy your products and your services, right? And so you have to stand often in front of large crowds. You might have to stand in front of your investors because you want to pitch an idea. So you want them to buy that idea. You want them to bring in some cash into your business, right? To make your business successful. So you have to be really good in communication. You have to be able to sell your product and convince them that it's a really great investment. If you think about employees also, I said leaders who are great communicators can motivate people to be, enthusiastic about what they do and to work hard and to perform, to really high standards. And that brings a lot of value to the company because it makes the company more profitable, right? If you have employees that work really hard, you can convince them, you can motivate them to do that, then you are almost guaranteed to be successful, right? And then the general public. So I was mentioning, things like marketing. For example, you have to be able to market your products and your services. That's one thing. You have to be sometimes able to speak to government officials, right? And all these people who kind of influence your business in order to build good relationships with them, and in the end, to be successful. So James Humes, who is a presidential speechwriter, he said that the art of communication is the language of leadership. And we also see, studies show various surveys that are done by companies such as Bloomberg, a big financial organization, that communication skills are up there in the top skills for actually any kind of occupation. So wherever you guys go, this is something that will always follow you. It'll always be with you. And the better you are at it, the better for you, And so a lot of students, oftentimes they ask me, students not only, but also, people in business, when I go in for communication trainings, they ask me, so what do we do? How can we become, great public speakers? And I always say, unfortunately, there's not one recipe. There's not one size fits all. I think the most important thing is for everyone to find their way and to kind of feel comfortable, right? So you have to be authentic. You have to show that you believe in what you're saying. You love what you're doing, right? And that will bring that authenticity, as we say in English, right? To that you seem believable. People will want to follow you. People will want to do what you ask them to do, right? So, and more importantly, they'll also want to listen. So there's not one size fits all, but there are a few tips that we know from communication, from public speaking in general, from studies that we can offer. And those are ones that I would like to share with you today. So I'd like to answer some of the key questions that we need to kind of look at when we're preparing ourselves to present, or when we're preparing ourselves to speak in public. And those questions are very simple ones. There are 4 of them. The first one is why, the second one is who, and the third one is what, and the last one is how. And I'd like you guys to join me in trying to answer those questions today. So we're going to start with the question, why? Why am I delivering this presentation? Why am I here, right? What do I want to achieve? Am I here to inform people about something? Am I here to persuade them, right? To convince them to do something for me? Maybe I'm convincing them to purchase my product or my service. Maybe I'm just here to give them a little bit of information, or maybe I'm here to entertain them. So those are the 3 kind of main purposes, as we say, in public speaking, of any kind of speech preparation process, right? So we choose one of them. And when we make that choice, that could then help us to determine what kind of tools we're going to use and how we're going to prepare, how we're going to go about this presentation, right? Because if we're going to be persuading, we might use various techniques. So we might use emotion, right? We may want to make people feel happy or excited, or sometimes sad in some situations, right? If you think about marketing, if you think of charity organizations, right? You look at some of their advertisements, they're usually quite sad, right? Because they want to persuade us that there's something that we should invest in, right? We should help, we should support. And so they want donations, right? So in this case, they're going to be persuading us through building that kind of emotion. We're going to feel sorry, we're going to feel bad for others. We're going to think, oh, we have more, we're wealthier, maybe we can somehow help, or we're more fortunate somehow, right? So those are the first, that's the first kind of question that we have to ask ourselves. And then the second question that we always ask in public speaking is who. So first, kind of why am I here? And then who am I going to be speaking to? And this is where we kind of analyze our audiences. And there are 3 things that I'd like to mention here today. And we have 3 types of audience analysis. And the first one is what we call demographic. The second one is psychographic. And the third is situational. Sounds kind of a little stuffy. but it's really quite simple. So if you think about the demographic analysis, this is where we ask ourselves basic questions about demographics. So for, let's say, what is the age group, the average age group of the people that I'm speaking to? Are these majorly men or women, or is it a mixed group? Where do they come from? What are their ethnicities, right? And so that could help us understand better how we can prepare ourselves. If you are speaking on a topic to, let's say, a group of 5-year-olds, and you're speaking on that same topic to a group of high schoolers like yourselves, or maybe people who are doctors, right? Then, of course, the language that you're going to use and the examples that you're going to bring are going to be completely different, right? We need to make sure that we always adapt them to the type of audience, because in the end, what we want to achieve is for everybody to understand what it is that we're saying, and for them to be able to have pleasure, to take pleasure in listening to us, right? Because otherwise, if they don't understand, if we're using a whole bunch of words that, if you need a dictionary to understand what I'm saying, you're not interested to listen to me. That's obvious, right? Then we have the second type of analysis is what we call psychographic analysis. And here we dig a little bit deeper. Sometimes we bring topics that we talk about that are a little bit maybe sometimes controversial. It could be that you might have like a presentation, or you're at an event and you're speaking about religion, right? So that's something that we have to be careful about, because it's something that pertains to people's values and to their beliefs, their deep beliefs. And so we have to be very careful and understand who we have in our audience if we're bringing up that kind of topic, because we don't want to be disrespectful. We don't want to insult anyone. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? So we kind of have to also have a clear understanding of this kind of, these kind of values and the beliefs that people might have in our audience in those cases. And the last type of analysis, when we think about our audience, is situational analysis. So here, what I usually do is I kind of ask myself the question, so where am I going to be delivering this presentation simply? Yeah, is it online? If it's online, what do I need to consider? What can go wrong? Technical issues, right? Maybe my slides won't upload. What do I do then? What is my backup plan? What is my plan B? If I'm in a big room, I kind of always check first to see, what is the stage like? Am I going to be able to move around a little bit? How much room do I have? Am I going to feel comfortable? Are people going to hear me? Do I need a microphone perhaps, right? So very simple things that sometimes, maybe very obvious, but in many cases it happens that public speakers, they don't take this into consideration, and then it's a big disaster, because you come up, people can't hear you, they're not comfortable because there are not enough seats for them, the room is stuffy, there are no windows, and it just becomes a disaster. So in the end, it's, they look at you as the speaker and they're thinking, well, seems like you weren't very well prepared, and this, I'm over it and I'm leaving, right? And that's something that obviously as a public speaker, you want to avoid. You don't want that to happen to you, right? So we have to understand who it is that we are speaking to. Now, the next question that we then ask is what? So if we know all that, now, what am I going to say? What is it that I'm going to bring in? What is my content, right? Because this is important. Because people are there to listen to me, that they want to learn something, perhaps interesting, preferably, right? So we have to think about what we're going to say and how we're going to organize that. So, when you look at presentations, when you look at speeches, they have the kind of standard, very standard format. Just like, you guys are at school, so I'm sure you write a lot of essays and you are very familiar with the essay format. So it's your typical introduction, your body, and your conclusion, right? And this is more or less similar for any kind of presentation. The only thing is maybe it's not as descriptive as you would find in an essay. It's a little bit different in the way that we organize this. So when you think about an introduction, we say that it's really nice to start with, if somebody introduces you, if somebody, tells the audience who you are and where you're from and what your name is and so on, you might not even have to introduce yourself. you can just go ahead and try to grab their attention. And this can be done in so many different ways, right? So you can start your presentation with, for example, if you can sing a song, you can sing a song, right? If that is something that is linked to your topic. You can show them a really cool video. You can show a nice photo. Sometimes it could be maybe an image that is shocking, right? That has something to do with your topic. You can ask a question, so you can interact with your audience. You can ask a rhetorical question, so to get them to think about something. So anything that you can come up with that will grab their attention and get them to focus on what it is that you're saying. You know, if you guys are familiar with TED Talks, you might have seen some of them. If you guys are young, so you're probably online, so you might have come across them. They're pretty good. These are talks, short events, sometimes, you know, anywhere between 5 to 18 minutes on different types of educational and tech topics. Like I said, some of them super interesting. So if you've never heard of TED Talks, something to explore. And these guys, they you know, have these fun ways of starting their presentations. And there's even one where the lady, she starts her presentation with complete silence. So she literally gets up on the stage, she starts setting up, she says nothing, she puts up a box, she stands on the box, and she's completely silent for about a minute and a half. And everybody's looking at her thinking, oh my gosh, what is she doing, right? So she found that way to grab the attention of her audience. So you can, if you're creative, if you have a sense of humor, you know that you can tell a good joke, you can open up with a joke. But with humor, be careful, because you really have to be funny. You have to know that you're funny, because otherwise that could really, really backfire. I'm not funny, so I don't tell jokes, because if I did, nobody would laugh and it would be super awkward. So I think it's something that only some of us can do. Not everybody can pull that off. And so that's for your introduction. And then in the body, quite simple, you think about what are the key points that I want to make. Now, we say that in public speaking, the magic number is 3, because people tend to remember things or remember numbers in chunks. So if you think about memorizing a phone number, which I think probably a lot of you might not do these days, because we have all our phone numbers in our contact lists, right? So there's no need to do that. But in the past, for example, I would memorize, when I was much younger, I used to memorize phone numbers. And so I would always memorize them in chunks, like 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 2, 8, 9, 1. That's the way our brains are wired. And that's the way we kind of retain information, makes it easier for us. And it's the same with a presentation. So if you tell your audience that you're going to present 2 or 3 or 4 things, then it makes it easier for them to follow. If you tell them at the beginning that you're going to present 16 things and you list those 16 things, you've lost them at point number 4. There's no way that they're going to be able to remember that as they're following your presentation. And then they don't feel comfortable with that. So if you look at my presentation for today, I decided to answer 4 key questions, right? And so those were my 4 elements. Those were the 4 elements of the body. And you guys can easily follow the presentation, right? Especially if somebody has an organized mind, if you're very structured, it makes that so much easier. And then the last thing here that we have is the conclusion. So that's the kind of the wow factor. And again, it's similar to the introduction. You can use any of the techniques that I had mentioned. So you can finish off with a question, with a citation. You can finish off with a fun video. You can finish off with with a nice image. And so I really recommend this. I encourage you, if you guys do presentations in class, I'm sure that from time to time this happens, you can try some of these techniques and you'll see how different it is, rather than just coming in and reading a couple of bullet points per slide and same old boring kind of presentation, right? So again, doing something in a slightly different way is, I think, always fun. And finally, asking ourselves the question of how, right? So how do I do all this? And so what are the secrets of some of the great public speakers out there? And I wanted to see if I can ask you guys, I can't see the chat personally, but maybe I can get some help here. I wanted to ask the students whether you guys have any favorite public speakers. Do you know of any public speakers that you kind of really enjoy watching? And like I said, I can't see the chat, so.
So Victoria said Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. Okay, perfect. That's amazing. Thank you. That's one of my favorites as well. Why is he your favorite? I can see the chat now.
Lais said Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, fantastic. That's a really great public speaker as well. Many books have been written about Steve Jobs. Excellent. Can you guys tell me why? Can you give me some reasons for which you admire Obama?
Victoria said she thought about Barack Obama because he's funny and charismatic.
Yes, that's true. And he has a really calming way of speaking as well. There's a lot of speeches of his that had been analyzed, and he has this kind of preacher way of speaking. His voice resonates really nicely. It's very calming and very kind, and people tend to like that very much. He has, yeah, and he has a lot of charisma. That's true. He is a nice person, I think, overall. That's my personal opinion. I agree with you very much. And how about for Steve Jobs? Any others? Any other favorites of public speakers and reasons for it?
Maria said she likes Sean Archer. I don't know how to pronounce it. Maria, maybe you can open your microphone.
I'm not sure I know who that is, but I'm very happy to learn. Do we have an answer there, or?
She said he's not exactly a public speaker.
Okay.
And Pedro said Elon Musk. Okay.
Okay. All right. Elon Musk. Is that who you're talking about?
Elon Musk. Yes, sorry.
Tesla?
Maria said Emma Watson.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she represents the young generation, great actress, and now absolutely fantastic public speaker. She's spoken at the UN, right? Because she's an activist as well. Very good. So some excellent choices there. Thank you very much for sharing with me. Perfect. So yes, so some of these, if we look at, I'm trying to, sorry, get back to the slides. Here we go. All right. So there are a lot of, great secrets of these public speakers. And I wanted to take a little sneak peek here because we can't, of course, cover all of them. But let's take a look. So first of all, confidence, right? That's the thing that we all kind of need to work on. I was mentioning earlier, that we're usually not born with it, and it's very difficult for some of us to get out there and to gain that confidence to speak. But one of the things that can help us, maybe a little bit obvious, but still, is preparation and a good amount of research, right? So if we know our topic really well, whatever it is, like if you're talking about public speaking, know a lot about public speaking. If you're talking about, a product or a service that you're selling in business, know a lot about that. If you're a doctor and you're talking about the surgeries that you conduct, you have to know everything about that, right? So you can answer the questions and that you can really show that, because if you know your topic, you're also passionate about it. And that immediately shows through the way that you present. And preparation, because even if you know a lot about your topic, you still have to prepare. You still have to have the structure. You still have to know your audience. You still have to, prepare your slides well, and then rehearse. And I say here, practice, 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 because practice makes perfect. It was actually Steve Jobs who said that you should rehearse twice as much as you need to. And he was an absolute perfectionist in terms of public speaking. As I mentioned earlier, many books were written about him. He did amazing product launches. If you guys ever have a chance, if you haven't seen them, you should have a look. He was one who followed all of the public speaking rules. I literally, when I watch some of his presentations, his speeches, his product launches, I can open a public speaking book and I can literally tick the boxes of what it is that he's doing according to some of the tips that we have, that we know from research. So he's really fantastic and always top notch in terms of preparation. Now, in respect to confidence, also, funny thing is that, you know, our brains can be tricked into us feeling confident. So there are studies that show that through nonverbal communication, we can trick our brains to think that we are confident, that we're feeling, you know, great about ourselves, and we're ready to go out there and deliver a great presentation. And power posing is one of the ways to do that. So you can literally, you know, stand in front of a mirror right before you go into a public speech, or if you go into a meeting, or if you go into an interview, and just go like, yeah, I got this, you know, I can do this, right? And the posture, if we change our posture, if we smile a little bit, if we kind of we have this confident body posture, then that helps our brain to think that we actually are feeling that way, and we go out there with a little bit more confidence. Try it once, you'll see it really does work. Because if you're standing there hunching like this and you're looking down and you're stressed, you're just making your body more stressed. Your brain is thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I can't go out there. I can't do this. I'm so fearful. And then another thing also for great speakers is rhetoric, right? So great speakers, they use familiar words. So these are, you know, the kind of words that are very concrete, they're specific. It's not abstract. These are also words that the audience will know, that they will understand. Like I said before, you don't want to be there with a dictionary looking up every word that the person is, you're going to get bored and you're not going to be interested, right? You want to eliminate clutter, so making sure that you express your ideas briefly and clearly, right? Pronounce the pronunciation, the enunciation is here also very important, and the structure of your presentation so that people can easily follow what it is that you're saying. Now, another thing also, another tip I would say, is creating a mental image to move audiences. So, you know, there have been books that have been written. For example, I mentioned the earlier TED Talks, and there was a book that had been written by Carmine Gallo. He wrote Talk Like TED, and he gave there, I think it was 8 or 9 tips on, you know, how to become a great public speaker, how to deliver a great TED Talk as well. And one of those things was that he mentioned that we should master the art of storytelling. So in any presentation, in any speech, you know, presentation in particular, if it's entertaining or, you know, persuasive, if you can tell a story here and there, it doesn't have to be anything long. It could be a short story, a short anecdote, you know, something that moves people, something that they can relate to, something that helps them understand. So it builds an image, it illustrates a little bit what you're saying is something that people really, it resonates with the audience, and they really love that. We like to listen to stories. It's, you know, it's something that I think comes even from childhoods. As little kids, we like to listen to stories, whether this is, you know, our parents or our caregivers telling us stories or reading stories to us, or watching them, you know, later on TV or whatever. But a good story is always something that is fun, and that any good presentation should also have, because it kind of evokes certain emotions, right? So there was an unknown author that once said that effective communication is 30% what you know and 70% how you feel about what you know. I think that it's very important to have content so that people are actually learning something and that you're making sense, because if you're not, they'll figure it out rather quickly. But it is true that a big part of a presentation is the way that we the way that we act, right? The confidence, as you guys had mentioned also, you know, the charisma, the body language, so the posture, you know, starting from things even such as the way that one is dressed, right? Dressing to the occasion, dressing to the people that you're speaking to, dressing accordingly as to what you represent, a business, a certain occupation, right? So this is extremely important, that nonverbal communication is key. So I mentioned, you know, posture, also eye contact in terms of nonverbal communication, looking at your audience is looking them in the eye, not staring down at one person. I have sometimes students in the classroom who, you know, it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable if they're looking at one point. So either they're looking up onto the ceiling or down onto the floor, and then we lose them completely because there's no eye contact. Or we have some that will stare somebody down completely, just look at one person and only at that one person. And then everybody else in the audience, of course, feels excluded, right? So sometimes, you know, they say that communication specialists say that you can kind of find your way to look to the left, and then after a couple of seconds, look to the right, and then after a couple of seconds again towards the middle, or you can, it doesn't even have to be, it can be like 30 seconds, right? So it's not too often as well, but making sure that you're looking at your audience so that they feel as though you're speaking to them. Gestures, right? We use different types of gestures. We don't want to overdo it, because if you're doing this, right, then you're kind of, people are focusing on the dance. They're not really focusing on what you're saying. But you should also not keep your hands in your pockets, right? Because that limits us completely. It makes it seem like we're looking for something in our pockets. What is it that we're looking for? Keys or some change or something, right? So it's important to have your hands out. You feel more confident that way as well. It gives you a little bit of freedom, a little bit of movement. And our hands, subconsciously, we use them. So as we're making a point, as we're stressing, as we're showing something, that something is big or small, somebody's tall, short, right? It could help to accompany our speech. And it makes our audience also more attracted to the way, to our speech, to our delivery. And it helps them understand also better generally what we're saying. The pace is important. This is something that I had to work on really hard, because I tend to speak quite quickly. So for me, and you know, being a lecturer in a classroom, for people to understand me, for people to be able to follow me, it really, I have to sometimes stop myself and remind myself, okay, you're going too fast, and then I have to repace, right? So we have to find the right pace. It shouldn't be too quick, but it also shouldn't be too slow, because if we're going way too slow, then people might get bored, right? So it really kind of depends also on what we're saying, but we can change the pace as we're saying different things. Sometimes you might have to speed it up because you want to say something exciting, right? And then sometimes you might need to slow it down because you want people to relax and really take in what it is that you had just mentioned. Yeah, so it really, really depends. And then the projection, that's the same, right? Not too loud, not too quiet, just right so that people can hear you. And then using your voice up and down, depending on what you want to say. So if it's, again, something exciting, you might kind of use your voice and speak a little bit louder and, you know, give that kind of energy. But also, again, if you're delivering something that you want them to calm down, you might quiet your voice, right? If you're saying something relaxing, something meaningful, right? You might take down that voice. So all of this, you know, all of these nonverbals, we call this nonverbal communication. I'm sure many of you are familiar. And this really helps to bring that presentation together and to deliver something that, you know, is exciting, is fun for our audience. And then, of course, the articulation, which I think I had already mentioned, so I won't repeat myself. And personal appearance I had mentioned as well. And funny thing, because if you know, sometimes students say to me, yeah, but you know, with personal appearance, you never know, how should you dress and whatnot. Like Steve Jobs, he always wore a black turtleneck and he wore jeans, right? So technically he was a CEO, he was a leader. how does that work? Like, shouldn't he be wearing a suit and a tie? Why is he wearing a turtleneck and jeans? How, you know, what is that all about? And what do you guys think? Does anybody have an idea of why it was okay for him not to come out in a suit, but just like in a turtleneck and a pair of jeans instead? It's quite casual, no? What do you guys think? Anyone have an idea? And again, I need to ask for help here. Melka, I think maybe, or Erika.
So yes.
We have an answer here. Yasmin responded. She said, made the audience more comfortable.
Perfect. And that's a very good answer. So it's exactly that. It made the people feel more, first of all, he was in IT. So a lot of IT specialists, professionals, who came to listen to him, they have this dress code of being more casual. So it's more jeans, t-shirts and so on, because in companies, they tend to sometimes, work with computers. They'll be repairing computers. Sometimes they're under the, desks with cables and things. And so they can't be wearing suits all the time, right? So he kind of, it's traditional, I think. And then he wanted to be part of that, first of all, but also because he already had so much charisma. He was, like we said, the CEO of Apple, and he was so famous, and that he didn't want to intimidate people further. Right? He wanted to get closer to them and to say, hey, I'm one of you guys. I don't want to dress up here and come out and say I'm a big CEO. I'm really like you. I'm one of the people, right? And so he wanted to connect and get closer to people that way. So that was a really great idea, I felt. He made people feel more comfortable, as you had mentioned, quite rightly so. All right, good. And I posted here, I don't know if we'll be able to share that maybe later. If you guys hadn't seen it, I really recommend it. It's a really short TED Talk. It's called TED Talk About Nothing. It's about 5 minutes long, and I think it's quite funny. It really illustrates very well how important stage presence and what we do on stage when we're speaking in public, how important that is. The guy literally for 5 minutes says nothing. He delivers a presentation about nothing. In terms of the content, the words that come out of his mouth. But in fact, through the nonverbal communication, he shows us everything that we should or shouldn't be doing during a presentation. So if you get a moment, you can have a look. Like I said, maybe I'll share with Melka the link, and then maybe she can pass it on to you guys, or if not, then you can simply Google TED Talk About Nothing and it'll pop up. It's right there. So you can have a look. I recommend it. It's quite, like I said, it's quite funny. Yeah, and so just to finalize here, John Powell once said, communication works for those who work at it. The point here being that it does take preparation, it does take practice, it does take a little bit of work if we want it to be interesting, if we want to make a good, and to kind of to leave also a good impression on our audiences. So I thank you guys very much, and I'll take any questions if you have any for me.
We have some questions from the chat. I have one question. Are there any exercises that we can do to improve public speaking at home?
Oh, definitely, yes. So there are a lot of different types of vocal exercises. If you're interested, I can send some, I can push some Melka's way perhaps, and maybe, I don't know if you can share those with the students, or would that be possible or not? You have, various types of breathing, because for me to demonstrate all of them would be very difficult, but there are, of course, there are breathing exercises. So first of all, people sometimes ask me, how do you overcome the fear of public speaking? What can we do before we go up on stage? And there's not one thing that works for everybody. There are different things. So some people will use various types of breathing techniques. So breathing deeply in and out. Sometimes people say that and you kind of laugh. You're like, yeah, really? But it does work. There's a physiology behind it. It makes us calmer. So that's one thing that we can do. And apart from that, again, it's about the practice. So it's the exercises, especially, because sometimes people feel that they speak, again, too quickly. I always recommend to my students to record themselves. So, prepare a short presentation, 2-3 minutes, and record, and then have a look at what you, as an audience member, right, as somebody who's watching that back, what you would change. Ask yourself that question. Is it too quick? Is it too slow? Am I pronouncing, everything properly? Am I articulating? Am I easy to understand? Or is there something that I have to work on? And today, this is no problem because we have the technology. So it takes a couple of minutes. And I think that's one of the things that I would really, really deeply recommend.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have more questions, but I wanted to invite the students to open their mics and ask the questions.
Absolutely. Don't be shy. Come on, guys. In the chat, you seem like a fun bunch. It'd be nice to hear you.
Yeah, Daniel, make a question. I think he's asking.
Hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Yes.
Hi, Daniel.
How can we make our intentions clear when we start a presentation?
How can we make because I didn't understand, I'm sorry.
Our intentions.
Our intentions clear?
Yes.
When we start our presentation.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So the intention, by intention, you mean the intention that you have towards the presentation, the speaker, what you want to say. Is that what you're telling me? Yeah.
Yes, like if you want to entertain or explain something.
You don't have to tell, I don't think you need to, if you're well prepared for your presentation, I don't think you need to tell your audience that you're going to try to persuade them or you're going to try to entertain them. That should be something that you use different techniques, you bring different techniques into your presentation that will help you to achieve that, right? So if you intend to be entertaining, then that means that in the preparation process, you need to use tools and methods that help you achieve that. So I know you have to have a whole bunch of jokes that you're going to be telling, or you have to have a sketch that you have prepared, and so that will allow you immediately to come out and strongly be funny, right? You'll tell a joke at the beginning and then you'll have your sketch, and immediately your audience, it'll be obvious to them that this is an entertaining presentation. So you don't have to tell them that. If you want to be convincing, if you want to be persuasive, again, we didn't have enough time. I'd love to come back one day and tell you all about persuasion and persuasive techniques. That's also something that, you can use a variety of rhetorical techniques and emotional or appeals in general, whether that be emotional or logical, right? Or credibility based, it's like I said, it's a whole story around persuasion. And then you will achieve that and your audience will see, at the end, they'll see, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He wanted to convince me to buy it, and I'm actually going to switch from that product that I've been using for the past 3 years to the product that he's talking about. And that means that you've achieved your goal. So you don't have to state that intention. You just need to be super well prepared to achieve it. And you'll know at the end whether you have achieved it or not, because you'll have a goal for your presentation. And if you've achieved that goal, that means that you did a good job. Any other questions?
I have one. The colors you use in your presentation are important for, what you're talking about, or not that much?
Yes. So, Jason, that's also, thank you very much for your question. With colors, I always say stick to the colors that you enjoy. because I believe that whatever you do in your presentation, it has to really represent you. And that's the authenticity that I was talking about. So you have to feel comfortable with that. For me, in terms of color, I believe that we shouldn't overdo it with color. That's one thing. It also depends on the presentation, right? If you're meaning it to be very fun and you need to add more color, then it's fine. But generally, we stick to 3-4 colors maximum in a slide, not to over decorate. And also to make sure that there's enough contrast. So for example, if you have a white background, you wouldn't use, let's say, white, you wouldn't have white bullet points, you wouldn't have white writing, because nobody would be able to see it. It would be black. And the other way around, if you have a black background, you'd have maybe perhaps white text. So that's more or less. In terms of slides, I would say general tips: not to over decorate, not to overuse color. Bullet points, this is crucial. A lot of students have an issue with this when they come first into our oral communication classes, for example, is what they do is they put a whole bunch of text in the slide, and then they just literally read that slide. And I always say, if I can read what you're telling me, then I don't need you to be there. You can just give me the slides. What do I need you there for? I came to listen to you tell me more. So for the people who are visuals in your audience, it's nice to have the slides, to give them something so they can see, because it's easier for us to follow. I'm a visual, so I like to see things. So bullet points, I see what you're talking about, but I want you to elaborate on that. I want you to tell me more, right? So I think one of the key tips for slides is not to overdo it, not to have too much text and not to have too much also color as well.
Lais sent a question in the chat. Unfortunately, her mic is not properly working, so I'll ask for her.
Sure.
How to keep calm when answering questions from reviewers of our dissertation, for example?
That's a good one. How to keep calm? Yeah, well, I think that first of all, not to rush into an answer, but allow yourself a moment of silence even. There are some, because it's a cultural thing. So maybe Asian cultures are a little bit more comfortable with silence. Western, if you look at the Westerners, not so much. We like to fill in the silence. But I always say, take a moment, don't mind that. Think about what it is that you want to say, gather your thoughts, take a deep breath, because that way you kind of allow yourself to calm down a little bit. And when you're ready, then start speaking. I think that's one of the best things that you can do. A lot of the time you'll see that, you're asked a question and you just kind of really want to answer it, and you start rambling on before you even had a chance to think about it. And that never works well. You just stress yourself out and you start talking about different things that nobody knows where you're going with it. So it's really important to think before you speak. So allow yourself that moment of preparation, I would say. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Well, I had one myself. How communication skills changed post-pandemic now that we're all online?
Oh, yeah. I think we're still we're still learning that, I guess. To a certain extent, we'd been there, and, there had been, of course, people around now, because of, or due to globalization, there are a lot of companies and a lot of people have been working to a certain extent remotely, right, between countries and whatnot. So some were more used to it than others, but now we've all been thrown into that. And and it's difficult to answer that question because we're still really learning. You know, it's different. It's definitely not the same. You know, the richest form of communication is definitely face-to-face, and I think that's not going to change. I still believe that even though we're getting more and more used to the virtual, and it, of course, there are a lot of benefits of it, I still think that the best deals are done face-to-face. I think the best classes are run face-to-face. There could be a component that is virtual, but there's no communication like, you know, true face-to-face personal communication. And then apart from that, I think we need to also, with this virtual element that's been added through the pandemic, we need to be more patient, I think, and really well organized and really well prepared, because there are so many things that can go wrong. If you're face to face with someone, you know, what can happen? There could be a little bit of noise here and there, not that many interruptions, right? I mean, if you plan your meeting, it's a closed door meeting, so, you know, should go smoothly. Online, the issues that we've been having, you know, I'm sure that all of you have been experiencing this, crashing of the computer, crashing of the system. Oh, we can't hear. Oh, we can't see. Oh, you know, all of this, and it tends to be exhausting as well. So I think that it's not about, you know, so to a certain extent, yes, it's about communication and how we prepare ourselves for these instances, right? So being prepared for a potential crash, being prepared for a situation like I was saying before, you know, the slides won't upload, it won't work and all this stuff. So organizing ourselves well, having a backup plan. And in the end, if this continues, not pandemic wise, hopefully not, but just in general, if we kind of switch more to the virtual, we're kind of dependent on IT companies, software companies, to make sure that they deliver something that is up to the standard that we need now, I think.
Thank you so much, Professor Joanne.
Thank you so much. Do you have any more questions for me?
Any more questions, guys?
Any questions? Shoot, I might not be able to answer all of them, but you can always give it a try. It was a great pleasure being here today. It's lovely that you guys were able to join. I'm up on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for taking your time to give the class, Professor Joanne.
It was a great pleasure. Like I said, I'm up on LinkedIn. I know that the young generation is more on Instagram, not that much, but if in any case anyone ever is on LinkedIn, the professional network, please feel free to look me up and send me an invite, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Super. Thank you
so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.